You probably noticed when you walked in that on the left-hand side of the entrance, there's the Poe room. Did you notice that? Yeah. It's the Edgar Allan Poe room, and so it's a real treat to speak at a place like that. And so I actually tried to open the door, expecting to find telltale hearts, casks of Amontillado, and ravens. And I assume that they're in there. But it's a nice, I think, introductory metaphor, because Poe liked to write at sort of the edges of reality, the edges of Victorian, mystery and horror and goth and so on. And so I want to talk about my job as kind of being an adventurer at the interface of technology and humanity. And so what I'm going to do is spend a few minutes telling you what I do, how I do it, and conclude with a few thoughts about some challenges and opportunities as we go forward thinking about information. So now, Director of User Happiness, what do you really do? That's a very Californian, almost Marin-esque title. So what I really do is I think about people. I spend a lot of time going out and talking to people, sitting with them, trying to understand, why do they do that? Why do they do a particular thing when they're trying to find some piece of information from Google? And so I spend a lot of time trying to get inside their mind, trying to understand why they do that particular odd thing when they search, and how we can make the whole system improve. Google, the query parser, humans. I want to make everything better. That's a small goal, but I think we can work on it. What I do day to day is I work actually at 3 levels of resolution, of time resolution. So let me describe it like this. I work at the microscopic level. I think about actions and behavior millisecond to millisecond. So what do you do in that 100 milliseconds while you're waiting for the results to come back? Turns out we know from our experiments, this turns out to be critical. It's actually really important. 100 milliseconds matters a lot. I also work at the meso level, sort of mid-level observations. So from minutes to days kind of thing. I do that, and I watch to see how people's thinking evolves over time. And I also work at the mega or the macro level, trying to understand what millions and billions of queries mean to us. And what is it that people in the large are trying to do. So the way this is rolled out, what I actually do is I do a lot of eye tracking studies where we watch how people's eyes move around on the page. We're trying to understand how they perceive these things and how we can shift the user interface to improve perception. We also do a lot of field studies where I go out to your house and I watch over your shoulder, or I go to your place of work and actually try to watch how you're using Google there. I go to coffee shops, I go to libraries, I do a lot of teaching of classes where I get the wonderful experience of teaching 50 people how to Google, how to speak Googleese. That's a fascinating experience in a public library where I find people don't know where the address bar is. They don't know where the address bar is on the browser, right? You have to remember that there's a lot of people like that in the world. Okay? And lastly, we do a kind of session analysis, and I'll touch on that at the end. So when we do eye tracking studies, it's like eye trackers everywhere throughout the world. You've all done eye tracking, right? Okay, well, what we do is we have an eye tracking lab, and we actually have a bunch of them around the company. And they kind of look like this. There's a usability lab where I'm taking this photograph from the observation room, looking into a place where there's a very ordinary looking monitor. People walk up, they start to use it, they do searches of various forms, and we watch to see what happens moment to moment. And let me show you a failed experiment. So this is, the pink dot is where your fovea is at this point, okay? And so I'm going to run this little video here. This is someone trying to notice what's different about the search results page here.
There's something different about this Google page from when you normally use it at home. Yeah. Well, it seems that the order of it is cleaner to read. Okay. It's like, it's like.
So here's the killer. You notice what's different, right? The blue triangles. In this 30-second clip, she never once looks at a blue triangle. Never. And so what happened is we discovered that visual attention is mediated by these processes. People saw that as typographic bullets, basically. They didn't realize they were actually interaction widgets. So failure. We did 12 people in a row. Nobody saw it. That was a product that didn't launch. So we learn a lot by doing that kind of low-level detail study. We also do a lot of field studies, as I said. And typically what happens is I'll go to someone's house, and here I'm at somebody's house, and she's trying to explain to me, how does a search engine work? Arthur C. Clarke had it right. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. To her, it's magic. She said, it's, I don't know, concentric circles of fuzzy logic. And that's kind of the level of understanding that people have about technology in the large. How does the Wi-Fi system actually work? How does security on your laptop actually work? Do you know? Well, do you really need to know? And so one of the things I'm interested in is to what level people need to understand these things. So here is, I won't read this all to you, but this is a transcript of one of my field interviews of a woman has a master's degree from Penn, runs her own website, has her own television show. She's extremely well educated, and she gets so stuck in the way she's using the Google interface in this case. So she writes in the middle there, in section 38, she says, are Filipinos ready for gay flicks? How does that have to do with what I just did? She was given the task of trying to find which actor has the most Oscars in the history of the Academy Awards. And so she ends up on a random topic, and she doesn't understand how. It was a mode switching problem for the HCI people in the crowd. But for the person actually sitting at home trying to get something done, it was an insurmountable barrier. We have to fix stuff like that. So one of my main jobs is to go out in the field and watch real people doing real tasks and come back and say, you know, guys, that kind of sucks. We don't need to do it that way. We need to figure out a better way to do it. So that's the micro level, the meso level, and now at the macro level, we do things with lots of the logs that we do. So we have billions of people around the world every day doing something on Google. And what we try to do is to figure out a way to analyze that. And how can we use that information to drive the design of what we're doing? So here's a graph I showed last year of query volume over a regular Sunday in the upper one. And what you want to see is that green one. You see that's a very typical query volume by country, in this case, Germany. And this was actually a special Sunday when Germany was in the World Cup. Can you tell when the World Cup was? Can you tell when halftime was? Yes, you can. And so one of the things I try to do is to actually marry the difference between the quantitative in the large and the qualitative in the small, and figure out how we can take that information to get between the two. So you probably remember a few years ago we introduced our Maps product. So this is 2005. And see that the results here on the right-hand side? A year later we modified it to put it on the left because the logs showed us that the right-hand side was not working. People were not doing that. We moved it to the left, we essentially increased the click-through rate by a lot. Okay? A year later, we introduced icons. What a good idea. A little bit of iconography there so you can recognize very quickly which pizza place you want to go to. A year later, we did a bunch of other changes, and now this is the current UI, different visual look and feel. This is mostly driven by logged analysis, although we validate it by going in the field and watching if people can actually get their pizza. So in the end, what we did is over a course of 5 years, we went through multiple changes. Roughly a change a week, think of it that way. In each case, moderated by our results from the experimental trials in the lab, from field studies, and from quantitative logs analysis. So we're really trying to get information about how people behave at these 3 different levels. One of the big challenges for us is we've got all this capability. We want to give you immense power. We've got a computer the size of the planet. But in the end, it's what you notice when you're sitting at home or sitting on your mobile device trying to map your way, in this case, to UC San Diego. So one of the things that you probably didn't notice is that little interactor widget right there, the little blue triangle. It's 10 pixels on a side. Nobody clicked on it, so we dropped that. Nobody clicked on that one either. Now, you might say, well, I could tell you that a priori. Well, the problem is most of what we do is not intuitive. We do these things, we do these alterations in the interface, alterations in the way search happens, and we mostly try to evolve it in ways that seem graceful and simple, but a lot of the results are not intuitive. As an example, in 2007, our advanced search page looked like this. You've used advanced search? How many people have used advanced search? Oh, I'm in a literate crowd, this is great. So you probably remember this, right? 2007. And what happened is I was on a field study, and the woman I was interviewing on a hot August evening got to this page and said, I hate this. That's literally what she said. And she hit back. And the reason she hated it is because of stuff like, well, do I fill out all those blanks or just one? How about this one? Usage rights. Oh my gosh. Usage rights? Do I need usage rights to do the search? What about numeric range occurrences? Now, those of you in the know would realize those are actually two different line items, not one line item. She perceived it as one gestalt, numeric range occurrences. Okay? Lots of problems with this. So we changed the UI because we had an 80% bounce rate. That means people were coming to the page and exiting under 5 seconds. That was not a good result. So we did very simple UI redesign based on that, and we basically doubled, or rather, we improved the use of that page by simple UI redesign by a factor of 2. Fantastic. Now, one of the things that I'm really interested in is how people get their job done, how they answer their information need. Now, if you were here last year, you probably remember this example. One of the key things that you probably all, well, let me test the audience first. How many of you know how to, when confronted with a page like that, find my name on that page? Do you know the mechanism? Raise your hand. Okay, most of you do. Okay, you would use Control F, right? Or Command F if you're a Mac person, right? Okay, here's the really frightening, scary result. If you just sample this population, I'd say it was 99% of you know that, right? I know there are a few of you who actually don't. It's okay. Use Control F, ask your buddy next to you, okay? When I did a survey of a couple thousand people in the US, I found out that 90% of English internet users do not know that. They do not know how to find a word on a page. Okay? Now, for you, it's a trivial operation. You want to show that a word is on a page or is not on the page, you do Control F, right? Imagine living in a world where you can't do that. It qualitatively changes your electronic reading experience, right? I bring up Moby Dick, I can find every instance of Ahab in that book like that. A person who doesn't know this cannot. Their reading and my reading are different, okay? Even scarier, 50% of US teachers do not know this. That is, the teachers teaching our kids don't know how to find content on a page, okay? So what's really interesting, I think, about all this is how people use the stuff that we give them. So, for example, you're all, I assume, expert searchers. Can you find a picture of Britney Spears? Sure. Can you find a picture of Rula Lenska? Yes? Do you know who Rula Lenska is? People above a certain age know, right? Okay. How about a picture of your grandmother? Yes, no. Yes? Yeah. Picture of my grandmother? My grandmother. Right, right. How about a video of Ted Williams hitting a home run? Sure, right, you can, okay. How about a picture of my grandmother hitting a home run? Right. This is funny, and in particular, I want to show you a really beautiful video clip of a guy trying to figure out what to do over the weekend. In theory, this video will run. There we go. So what the challenge here is to try to figure out what to do.
Yeah, I want to try with one last thing.
Okay.
Activity thing.
Okay.
I'll see what happens. Activities for kids. Oh, see? They're not giving me a chance, man. They're all for kids. No wonder I couldn't find. So you should type adult. Activities. See? That's what I mean. So it's really hard to search for these activities.
I love this example because the next query was adult activities San Francisco Saturday night. I do not show you that video. Now, this is funny. Why? Because you know there are potentially not safe for work and particularly not safe for conference results that might show up there. He does not. Wait a second. He doesn't know that a big chunk of the web is out there, and he's going to trigger it by doing this, right? So remember the question about my grandmother hitting a home run? How did you know that? How did you know? Because you have a pretty good model of what's in the library. Oh, excuse me, what's on the web. You already know a lot, right? You have some fairly deep knowledge about these things. And this guy just did not. Okay? So part of the problem is we have been massively successful, we as a field. Google has all these different properties. Microsoft has a lot of properties. Twitter is massively successful with all its product offerings, right? Name your favorite large company. And we're so good that we are accelerating the evolution and the production of all the new kinds of stuff. The problem is, what if you didn't know about porn? What if you didn't know about, for example, that you can find calendars on the web? What if you didn't know that you could find books on the web? Question for you. What do you not know? What do you not know is possible to find? We can find books. What's the interface for books? How should we design that? We have decades of practice. Each of us has decades of practice using this form factor. How do I translate that into that form factor? What do I have to do? What do I do with a product like Google Earth, where you can move in 3 dimensions and you can tilt and rotate and roll and do all this stuff? You can layer on models of buildings. I can download the White House and project it onto Google Earth. What's the interface design for that? How would I know? So combining all this together, I think we face as a field some interesting challenges for the future of information. The challenges are, I think the first one is literacy. For the first world literacy, it's how to use and understand the capabilities that we're giving to you. Okay? For the third world, how will it change as increasing billions of people come onto the internet who may or may not be literate in even their primary language, let alone our primary language? Right? Remember when AOL people came onto the internet? Any of you remember that? It changed the texture of the internet in an interesting way. This is going to happen again. That's challenge number one. Challenge number two is the implication of being literate about what's possible to do on the web and so on, is when you're not part of the internet, that becomes even more of an issue. Suppose you're actually not a Twitter fan, you actually don't ever look at Twitter, you're missing out on a fraction of our shared information experience. Another huge problem, I think, is abuse. In particular, as we allow more billions of people to come onto the internet, there's increased opportunity for spam and malware, phishing, and trolls. Let me ask you a quick question. How many of you in the internet context know what a troll is? Raise your hand. Okay. Most people don't. Most people have no idea that trolls exist or what they're doing. And lastly, I got a little timer up here. I said it. It was actually flashing 12 when I walked up here, but I fixed it for you. The last one here, the unexpected challenge, is unexpected interactions. As we start to develop more and more kinds of tools and more levels of interaction, what is it we're building out that we're not expecting? And how will this change our collective experience? Last slide. Okay. I think there's a huge set of opportunities for us here. As we increasingly add more people, we're going to add increasing kinds of content. More kinds of stuff is going to come online. We'll have new capabilities, new content, new genres evolving. We will then expand our range of opportunities as we have new ways for people to get access to that information and deal with it. That is, they want to recombine it, they want to analyze it, they want to solve their information need. And so I want to point out that the underlying technology is changing at an incredible rate. That's kind of why we're here, right? What you now know will stale out very, very quickly. All of us, me, Mary, Abdur, everybody here. You have got to take on this challenge for yourself of becoming literate in your own information technology. You've got to be able to be a good researcher. And on this theme of being at the edge of the interaction between people and technology, I'll tell you one last story, which is I taught a class of 4th graders in Foster City, which is a wonderfully diverse community. 30 kids, 30 languages spoken at home, that kind of diversity. And I taught them, because they were so linguistically diverse, I taught them how to use Google Translate. And since it was 4th graders, 2 weeks later, I got a packet in the mail like this. All the thank you letters from all the kids. And one was really great because it was a letter from Armando, a little boy, who said, "Thank you for teaching me how to use Google Translate because now I can write to my grandmother." You see, his parents don't want him to know Spanish. It's viewed as déclassé. It's moving the wrong way in the ladder of social hierarchy. They don't want him to know that. But he still wants to write to grandma in Honduras. So with Google Translate, he can do that. And I think that's a nice example of the way technology provides new affordances, new possibilities for all of us to think about information in our personal relationships in a very, very different way. Thank you.